we have a insatiable demand for energy, so we've got to kind of keep up. And so fusion will be what keeps us at net zero. So renewables get us to net zero, fusion's what keeps us at net zero.
Interesting.
We're looking at ways to try and improve the competitiveness of the UK,
Right.
so that we are an attractive place for the battery facilities. And
Is that what the Hutton Commission
That's
is
what
about?
the Hutton Commission is all about. And, as we've gone through this process, there are a whole bunch of things around the periphery of that ambition that need to be fixed.
Hello and welcome to Women in the Driving Seat, where we take the time to shine a spotlight on the wonderful women in automotive. This week is the Scientist episode. Let's delve into our guests' backgrounds today. Professor Isobel Sheldon OBE DSc (HC) is the global CEO of Western Cam Inc., who has worked for 22 years in the lithium-ion battery industry. Recognised with an OBE in 2020 for her pioneering work in EV battery development, she has delivered multiple world firsts, including the first commercially available plug-in hybrid and the first 12-metre EV bus battery. With senior leadership roles at British Volt, Johnson Matthey, Cummins and the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre, she is a leading voice in advancing decarbonisation, sustainability and brand value protection for OEMs during the electrification transition. Professor Sheldon also contributes to industry strategy as a trustee of the Faraday Institution and a member of the UK Automotive Council. Valerie Jamieson is Development Manager at the Fusion Cluster. Her role is to encourage collaboration, knowledge sharing and innovation between companies and organisations interested in fusion energy and all the exciting technologies that make it happen. She joined the UK Atomic Energy Authority in 2021 following a long career in journalism at the New Scientist. It's a job that took her from the world's most powerful telescopes situated on the highest mountaintops to laboratories looking for missing matter located miles underground, plus everything in between, she says. She packed in a job she called the best job in the universe to work with organisations and companies looking to get fusion energy onto the grid. And blown away by the progress and ambition in fusion, she still thinks she's got the best job in the universe. Welcome to you both. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you, Erin. It's
Thank
good
you.
to be here.
Good, especially on Tube Strike Day. Whoop, whoop. Right, let's get started. Valerie, what plates have you been spinning and what balls have you been dropping this week?
Well, we're recording this at the start of September, so I'm juggling back to school. And I have, despite all my best planning and efforts during the summer holidays, school uniform has been a complete disaster.
Oh, tell me.
So still don't have school shoes.
Well done.
Yes, school uniform, I dropped the ball on that.
That's good. By the way, I just spoke to one of my guests earlier. We were talking about name tags and, do you sew, do you iron? She had the genius solution, can I just say, she's got 4 daughters, of just putting in their surname, because then she didn't need to redo tags per child. It could just, one member of the family would get the uniform back when it went missing. So there you go. There's my top tip. And Isobel, what about you? What have you been up to this week?
Well, I don't have this problem with the children and school uniforms and name tags and all that kind of stuff, because that's well behind me now. My children are in their mid-20s, so I don't have that summer rush all the way through to September to try and get them ready for school again. For me, it's just the slog of startup life, really.
God, you sound depressed.
Well, I think a lot of people make a big thing out of entrepreneurs needing to be resilient. And I think that's very much the order of the day if you decide to step onto this path, because things like raising money, for example, you can't do anything unless you've got money in the bank account. You've got to go and talk to investors. And there's a whole range of people out there that you need to talk to. Some of them are really educated about your industry and other people aren't educated about the industry at all. So you have a different degree of explanation that needs to go along with that raising money exercise. And hence the reason for the hoarse voice is because I've been speaking to investors so much that I'm starting to lose my voice at the moment. I've overstressed it.
And has that been in the UK for you this week? Or have you been abroad?
All in the UK since about June. Spent a couple of weeks in China talking to equipment suppliers and technology partners and investors. And then the week before that was out in the US for a week doing the same thing.
Oh, well, we'll get onto that shortly. Valerie, this is going to be one of those podcast episodes where I'm like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to explain that again in simpler words. So, fusion. Talk to us about fusion in words we can understand.
Okay, so fusion is the process that powers the sun and billions of stars that you see up in the night sky. And what's going on in the stars is that they are absolutely massive balls of hydrogen, and the pressure and the temperature are so intense inside that the hydrogen and other light atoms get squished together so that they fuse. In the case of hydrogen, two kinds of hydrogens come together, squish together to create helium. And in that process, it releases huge amounts of heat and energy. And that's what makes the sun shine. Now, for decades, scientists have been recreating this process in laboratories around the world. But what's happened recently is that we've recognised that this process could be used to build power plants, and we could create industrial heat and electricity for the grid using fusion as that heat island. So that's the big change that's happened. And the reason why fusion is so attractive for this is there's no fossil fuels, no greenhouse gases produced. It's sustainable. The fuel comes from seawater and lithium, and it's safe as well. So you don't have any runaway nuclear reactions. So, and one of the attractions of fusion, it is so energy dense. It's the densest form of fuel that we know. Just 1 gram of fusion fuel could replace 10 tons, 20 tons of coal. So
wow, that puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Tiny amounts of fuel, hugely energy dense. So it's really exciting times.
Okay, I'm sold, and I'm still with you, crucially, so that's the main point.
Job done.
Well done, thank you very much. Isobel, can you do, in that case, I'm going to leapfrog my first question to you and say, can you do the same for us for the lithium-ion battery?
So we can't quite get to the same level of energy density that Valerie's chasing after with fusion. I mean, if we could unlock the energy that's in all the matter around us, we wouldn't have an energy problem. It's just finding the key to unlocking that's going to be the secret. And obviously, fusion, the best example being at the centre of most solar systems throughout the universe and the galaxies that we see. That's the obvious place to go and look for that kind of energy density. But when you come out to batteries, you've got some fundamental electrochemical limits. When you're moving, in our previous session that we did the other week, we talked about lithium ions moving backwards and forwards between the anode and the cathode material and releasing the electron that goes around the rest of the circuit. It's an oversimplification, I know, but fundamentally, that's how we imagine things are working. Lithium is one of the best materials to do that because it's number 3 on the periodic table. The radius of the atom is fairly small, so therefore it can move backwards and forwards and get inserted into chemical structures or inserted into layered materials on the other side much easier. But you can't go beyond the energy density that's available from the movement of lithium ions backwards and forwards. What we can do is we can store more of it in the cathodes and the anodes, and I think we're going to talk about what a cathode is a little bit later.
Oh, we are.
But fundamentally what we're not doing is breaking down the elemental physics of the materials that we're using in batteries. We're utilising the electrochemical properties of materials that are in existence already. So we're not changing the state to a certain degree. We're just taking advantage of its electrochemical properties and making it go backwards and forwards. I'd love to get to your level of energy density, but it's just not possible.
Okay, so let's scroll back in time to Isobel, you explaining to us then. Let's pick apart cathodes, anodes, the bit in the middle, electrons, things whizzing around. Explain to us very simply batteries.
So it depends what battery.
Let's stick with cars.
Stick with cars. Well, fundamentally, there's been 5 revolutions in battery technology for the last 250 years. Voltaic pile, lead acid battery, moving on to the nickel cadmium battery, nickel metal hydride batteries, and then finally lithium ion. And they all work in slightly different ways. What we've got today is called the lithium ion battery, and fundamentally you're relying on adding electrons to or taking electrons away from a lithium atom. So you're changing its charge. Now, what you want to do with that lithium ion is you want to make it move backwards and forwards. and you make them move backwards and forwards to what are called anodes and cathodes. And we can have a debate actually about whether a cathode is positive or negative. It depends where you are in the charge cycle.
Oh my God.
Because you can actually change those things around. But fundamentally, you've got two receivers of these lithium ions.
Okay.
And they can either be more positively charged or more negatively charged. And that will dictate where they sit and where they move to. The electrolyte that you'll hear a lot about in relation to battery technology, because we're supposed to be moving on to solid electrolytes rather than liquid electrolytes.
Solid state batteries, yes.
The electrolyte is really, really interesting because it's a material that needs to be pretty much electrically isolating, but you need to still have the ability to pass the ions, the lithium ions, either the positively or negatively charged versions of a lithium atom, through the electrolyte to make it move backwards and forwards.
Mm-hmm.
So you can then take the electron and pass it around the rest of the circuit. The rest of the circuit is the charger or the drive system that powers your car, because that's what fundamentally drives an electric motor, is a whole bunch of electrons. And we always think about those as electrons moving through a pipe, water analogy. In effect, it doesn't really work like that, but it's the easiest way to think about those things. So anodes and cathodes are pretty much the reserves for the positively or negatively charged lithium ion as it moves backwards and forwards in those batteries. And the separator keeps everything electrically isolated from each other. So if you don't have the separator and they come together, you end up with a short circuit.
I was going to say, okay, right. Well, while we're here then, so let's touch on solid state batteries.
Solid state is a really, really interesting development.
Because I suppose the context for this for a non-scientist and for somebody, for example, hey, let's just say a motoring journalist off the top of my head, is that I keep hearing the word, solid state batteries are the holy grail for the car industry. They're more dense, energy efficient. This is where we need to get to. And maybe there'll be fewer fires with solid state batteries. Anyway, they keep being posited as this is where we've got to get to. And yeah, it's on the horizon and we're almost there and it's going to revolutionise, I don't know what, range pricing of electric cars. So talk to us about solid state battery, how it differs. Is it coming? What knock-on effect would it have for the consumer? Will it have? Is it going to have, if it ever comes?
I think we need to start with why is solid state batteries? Why are they interesting? So really the fundamentals come from three elements. You're supposed to be able to use lithium metal anode, which you can't do with you can do, but not very safely with the liquid electrolyte system. And lithium has a very, very high specific energy density. And instead of packing those bits of lithium into graphite, which is what the anode material in most lithium-ion cells is, you're supposed to be able to make them entirely out of lithium, so significantly increasing the energy density. Number two, liquid electrolytes tend to be quite flammable. So if you have a ceramic, and we'll call it a ceramic for the purposes of this discussion, solid material, it's very, very hard to set it on fire, fundamentally. So safety is the other reason why you're supposed to be, thinking about solid state batteries as being this big revolution that's happening in the electric vehicle
and
world. Therefore
insurance premiums, thinking at the consumer end of it.
Yes. I mean, if you're thinking about risk, then certainly the solid state batteries would be a really good idea. The other thing that's supposed to be improved is rate capability. So the ability to charge these very, very fast. And have lower risks whilst doing that. And it's all well and good. These are all headline reasons why you do solid state batteries, and you think that's the holy grail. We can go twice as far, we can charge them as fast as they like, and they're very, very safe. It's great in theory, very, very hard in practice. So there are some problems. There are some problems you've got to overcome. Instead of having this liquid electrolyte which wets out, if I put water on this table, the water will seep into all the imperfections in the table and it will wet into the surface. Where you've got a solid electrolyte and you've got solid anode and cathode materials, going back to the previous conversation, you've got what's called surface chemistry. You've got these very flat materials that you've got to push together so that you can get the ions, the lithium ions, to move backwards and forwards across that solid interface. To do that, you have to apply pressure. To squeeze them together really, really hard to make sure that you've got the smallest gap between these solid materials. So that's problem number one. generally, if you build them into a pack, you've got this enormous mechanical structure to squeeze the battery cells together to make them function. And the size of that mechanical structure tends to take away from the energy density improvements of the cells. If you need a structure the size of a battery pack to make it work, then you're effectively lowering your watt hours per litre, your energy density that you can get into your vehicle. Number two, this lithium metal anode sounds like a wonderful idea because it's so highly energy dense, much higher energy density than a graphite anode. But the problem is that when you start discharging a solid state cell, you're in effect stripping lithium off that anode and you're inserting it in the cathode material. Mm-hmm. And the cathode materials fundamentally very, very much the same as you would use in a normal lithium-ion battery. Mm-hmm. We're only talking about the anode and the electrolyte being different. The problem is when you strip that lithium off, you've got to put it back when you recharge it. So you end up with voids. It doesn't all come off in a nice single layer. It comes off in pockets because of the electrostatics involved in the lithium metal itself, but also the imperfections within the material within it's made and the imperfection between the solid electrolyte interfaces.
What are you trying to tell me? This is not going to happen?
Well, no, it will happen. We've just got some way to overcome these problems. And that voiding problem, and then when you plate it back, the dendrites that grow, because it's all uneven and tend to pierce through the solid electrolyte and cause a short circuit, and hence actually cause a safety problem. And going right back to the start, the reason why we're doing solid state batteries is to improve the safety. All these problems, plus the manufacture cost, lithium's very expensive, graphite's very cheap, price is going to go up. You've got to invent a complete new manufacturing process because at the end of the day, we know that lithium-ion batteries are too expensive and we need to lower the cost. Solid state is 4 or 5 times more expensive than lithium-ion at the moment. So it's got a long way to come down to that manufactured cost that's going to make it widely available.
So we're not talking about the next decade then, are we?
It's not by next Tuesday. For sure.
Okay, thank you. Valerie, what part for fusion technology then in net zero for the UK?
This is a great question, and I think a lot of people they think of net zero as a final destination. That when you reach it, we're done, and that's not the case. So renewables are going to be what gets us to net zero by 2050. But of course, our energy demands as in the world are just going to continue to go up and up and up as we bring billions of people out of energy poverty, as we turn on more AI data centres. We have this insatiable demand for energy, so we've got to kind of keep up. And so fusion will be what keeps us at net zero. So renewables get us to net zero, fusion's what keeps us at net zero.
Interesting.
Fusion very much think of as the energy of the future, and it'll work with renewables. That's really important to say. This is not fusion or renewables. It's working with renewables. And the beauty of fusion is that provides this baseload power. So when the sun's not shining, when it's calm, when you need that power, at the moment that's fossil fuels that are supplying it. In the future, that can be fusion and fission as well.
Do you think it will be fusion and fission? You say it can be. Do you think it will be?
Oh, I have just the ambitions that we're seeing in fusion, the drive that we're seeing in fusion. In my mind, this is absolutely going to happen.
Government investment?
There's a lot of government investment going into this in the UK. At the recent spending review, the government announced £2.5 billion for fusion over the next 5 years. And a lot of that is going towards building one of the world's first fusion power plants. It's going to be in a place called West Burton in North Nottinghamshire. And that's an area where there are lots of coal-fired power stations that have been decommissioned. So we're seeing this story of fossil to fusion sort of coming through, which is sort of really nice. The reason I quit my lovely job at New Scientist was because one of the trends that we've seen in recent years is not just governments funding it, but we're seeing a whole lot of startups and private fusion companies coming in here as well. And for me, these are game changers. I think these are going to do for fusion what SpaceX and Blue Origin have done for space.
Right.
So back when I was a journalist in the 2020s, I would be writing and editing stories about these dudes in California, and they were always dudes, who wanted to send people into space. So people like Burt Rutan, Richard Branson was involved, Elon Musk. And you think, why are they doing this? Because that's what government agencies like NASA or European Space Agency or the Russian Roscosmos, that's what they do. Why are they doing that? And then sort of look at what's happened. That 20 years on, we've got SpaceX completely transformed how we send satellites into space. They've brought the cost right down, and some of that is to do with learning from batteries, which I can tell you my Elon Musk stories if you like. And so I think this is, absolutely going to happen.
Yeah.
When is a different story, but it's absolutely going to happen.
Well, go on then. You said when is a different story.
I know.
I'm a journalist. Come on, give me something.
I did set that one up there, didn't I?
2040, 2030, 2050.
So the UK's power plant, this is due to come online in 2040, but the private fusion companies they're much more ambitious in their timelines. And when you ask them, they predict that, one of them will there's about 60 of them now around the world. They've amassed about $10-12 billion in investment just recently. They are absolutely going for this. And they predict that one of them will get fusion electricity onto the grid by the 2030s, the first half of the 2030s.
Okay.
Now, getting electricity on the grid, that's not the same as having, scaling up and having fusion power plants on, in every town, but a really significant step.
Okay, great. It's time for podcast pit stop. Here we go, your quick fire round. Isobel, are you ready? Cathode or anode?
Cathode.
America or Europe?
My heart's in Europe, but the business
We'll come on to the
opportunities
business
are in America.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll come on to that shortly. Aluminium or steel?
Aluminium.
Lithium or cobalt?
Lithium.
Read a book or watch TV?
Read a book.
Takeaway or eat out?
Eat out.
Okay, thank you. Valerie, chemistry or physics?
Oh, physics.
Lab or library?
Lab.
Cinema or concert?
Oh, concert.
Hatchback or estate?
Hatchback.
Pure electric or plug-in hybrid? Or a fusion-driven bus?
Oh, well, we can talk about fusion.
Electric or hybrid?
Electric.
Flowers or plants?
Ooh, plants.
Reuse or recycle?
Recycle.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you very much. Isobel, back to America versus Europe. Let's talk a bit about why have you deserted us for the US? Have you deserted us for the US to set up cathode production there? Couldn't you do it in the UK? Don't we desperately need manufacturing here?
Of course, I have to be really, really careful answering this question. So I'm on the government's commission for gigafactories in the UK. So
also love to talk to you about.
Yeah, I mean, only a certain amount I can talk about that. But we have to think about where are we now in the economic cycle? Where is the most advantageous place to make materials, especially if it's a energy intensive process, which cathode materials are. You have to go where the lowest cost energy is. And we built this business on some very sound fundamentals. We said, number one, we're not going to go deliberately right at the start for grants or subsidies because they either have a habit of not turning up, or they're late, or checks don't get written and companies face a cliff edge. So we weren't going to be dependent on those right from the start. Number two, we had to be cost competitive with China without subsidies or hiding behind tariff barriers.
Yeah.
So you probably understand that we're trying to build a business that will stand on its own 2 feet without artificial or synthetic support. And one of the only places you can do that outside of China is the US. We do have plans to come to Europe. We haven't decided if it's within the EU or in the UK yet. But fundamentally, we need to get the business up and running in the US first.
Yeah.
Because that's where we've got, it's where the white space is. That's where we don't have quite so much competition.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you can't, there's very little that you can say about the Hutton Commission on battery manufacturing in the UK for obvious reasons. But can you just explain what the Hutton Commission is? We've referred to it, but we haven't really said for people that might not know anything about what the UK is trying to achieve. I think there is a sense of people don't know, are we still trying to build gigafactories in the UK? Is that still an aim? Have we given up on trying to attract any battery manufacturing in the UK, or we're looking at ways to do it still?
We're looking at ways to try and improve the competitiveness of the UK,
Right.
so that we are an attractive place for the battery facilities. And
Is that what the Hutton Commission is
That's what
about?
the Hutton Commission is all about. And, as we've gone through this process, there are a whole bunch of things around the periphery of that ambition that need to be fixed. Energy cost is one of them.
Would you say that's a predominant one?
It is quite a big one.
Okay.
Yes. The amount of money that is going to be available in support of these initiatives is another one. Who are the customers going to be? That's a big question. Because if you look at some of the material developments in the world, in the world of batteries, and look at some of the cathode materials and anode materials they're using, we had a conversation about solid state. Where is that technology going to be moving to in the future? How relevant are the technologies that we have in the stable at the moment, and how long will they last?
Yes.
Because if there's going to be a change in manufacturing process or a change in the fundamentals of the battery industry, we need to be cognizant of that moving forwards. Don't forget, we already have 2 big battery facilities here in the UK. So the Envision AESC facility up in the northeast, it was actually the first and only battery gigafactory for about 10 years in the whole of Europe. So we've got a history of being first.
That's Sunderland.
And that's being expanded quite dramatically, and there's been government support has gone in to help in that. And then, of course, you've got the Agratas facility down in Somerset that's just coming up to some major construction milestones. So it's not like we don't have that capability in the UK. We do. We just need more of it moving forwards. And at the moment, we've only got about 60% of the demand covered with those 2 facilities that are in existence.
60% of the projected demand or the current demand?
Projected demand up until 2030 and then 2035.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, this will it impacts all sorts of things, doesn't it? Not least things like rules of origin, trade, which stipulates that a certain percentage of the car's manufactured components and so on have to be in the country in which the car is manufactured. Otherwise, it faces tariffs.
Well, has to be in the European Union or the UK.
Yes, sorry. Yes. Yeah. So we do need battery facilities here.
We do, and probably even more importantly, the European Union manufacturers also need to have that domestic capacity, because the UK is about 25% of new car sales in the whole of Europe.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the EU, but the geographical location, which is Europe. So there's a huge number of cars get exported from Europe to the UK every year. And that means that batteries that go into those vehicles have to conform to the Trade and Cooperation Agreement restrictions on localised content. Otherwise, they have a 10% tariff barrier coming into the UK.
Yeah.
So it's not just about UK to the EU, it's EU to UK as well. So that needs to drive all of the battery facilities in the European Union. If they want to sell cars in the UK, they're going to have to start thinking about their supply chains and localising those supply chains.
Yeah. Wow. It's exciting times. Valerie, coming back to fusion technology again, what's it looking like for homegrown talent in the UK? Have we got a pipeline of great physicists coming through? Is it going to be somewhere else where China, looking forward, we can already see that China is ahead of us by 2 decades? What's the picture?
So I think the UK, this is one of the great things about the UK is there is a wealth of fusion talent here, and there's a really healthy pipeline of young people coming through.
Amazing.
And what really inspires them is that fusion gives them hope. It used to be at UK Atomic Energy Authority, you get graduates coming in, they were excited by this intellectual challenge of creating a star right here on Earth. That was the thing that, that intellectual challenge was the thing that really drove them. That was 20 years or so ago now. Now we're just like, oversubscribed with young people wanting to study fusion because they see that this is an answer to solving the climate crisis. So that's really inspiring. And we've been operating fusion machines in the UK for decades, so we have this depth of talent as well. So we've got the breadth and the depth of the talent, and we have this pipeline coming through. On China, it's hard to know what's going on there, but of course they're pursuing fusion sort of really aggressively. And we just have to see how that plays out.
It sounds like a bit of a kind of route one question, but I think it is important to acknowledge, what about girls coming through? What about women in your industry? How big is the gender gap? It sounds like, why reduce this conversation to something along gender lines? But until we are anywhere near gender parity across the sciences, across industries like automotive, I think it is a question we still have to ask.
Yeah, so I mean, there are some phenomenal women scientists that I see every day, and there are also some of these fusion startups are amazing female CEOs, chief technology officers, chief operating officers. That there are women in these top positions. Are there enough? Of course not. The question about girls going into science is really a really interesting one, and it goes right back to literally the early years, because there's so much unconscious bias. There's this just wonderful video that I can recommend. You look it up on YouTube. It's an experiment that was shown on BBC, where they took toddlers, a boy and a girl, and they swapped their clothes over. And then they set up a room with what you might call girls' toys, so dolls, prams, pink fluffy toys, and also what you might call boys' toys, robots, puzzles, cars, things like that. And then they got volunteer adults to take one of the children in and sit down and play with them. And in every single case, the adult took a girl in, and they sat down and they started, showing the girls what they thought were the girls, the dolls, the prams, the pink fluffy toys.
In other words, the boy that had been dressed in the girl clothing.
Yeah, it was a boy that had been dressed as a girl, but it was the adults. So it wasn't that the children were preferring these toys. It was the adults they had this bias. They were, and this is a toddlers. So very, very, very early on, you see this bias, and that permeates all the way through school. And it's a real shame that even at 16, there's this big gap between the number of girls and boys studying physics. I remember when I was 16, there was two girls in my physics class. We got interviewed for an educational video because we'd chosen to study physics, at university, and we thought we were going to change the world. And here we are 30 years on, and we still have these same issues. And it's not that girls cannot study physics; it's the biases.
I mean, what are your thoughts about it all, Isobel? Are you surrounded by many women in your field? What do you think about trying to grow the pipeline? How do we do it?
I think, well, within the battery industry, I think there's a greater proportion of female representation all the way across, from senior management through to scientists and engineers. Very, very different to the automotive industry as road. That's typically a very, very male-dominated industry. I think one of the problems that we've got, we are sort of distilling this down to a gender conversation here. I think one of the problems that we've got is attracting enough people into engineering and technology, full stop. Male, female, in between, whatever. It's trying to get the young people into this field, because so much of the world is now looking really attractive from a software perspective or an AI perspective. That's where a lot of the investment dollars is going at the moment. And unless you invest in hard assets, either hard science or hard manufacturing assets, there's going to be no industry to pull people into. Regardless of where they come from or who they are. So I feel very, very strongly at the moment that we need to have a bit of a rebalance in the way the investment community looks at hard manufacturing assets or hard science. And I keep having to remind people, to run your AI data center, you're going to need hardware. to make that hardware, you need to have physics, chemistry, mining, and engineering. I've just realised I've been tapping the table, which is going to drive sound engineer crazy.
Having kittens. But
you need
why.
You need to have all those 4 things, because there will be no hardware to run your software on unless we address that problem. And the way things are going, it's going to be one area of the world that's going to dominate the manufacturing of those things. And that's going to upset us geopolitically moving forwards. So we really have to have a different attitude towards what we're good at, what we invest in, and what we can reclaim as the domain that we once, reigned supreme over.
Yeah.
And manufacturing, modern industrial revolution started right here in the UK.
Yeah. And where does that all start? It starts at school, right?
Why do we talk ourselves out of it the whole time?
Yeah.
I think it's that whole, you can't be what you can't see. So,
which is why you two have to get out there and talk to every single school child in the country.
It's a task.
Go on, off you go. Brilliant. Well, on that note, shortly before you go and reclaim education for sciences, a life lesson from both of you. Valerie, what one life lesson would you say so far has been your gift you're willing to share with us?
So I'm going to share a life lesson that my son taught me. Given that we're at Autotrader, So this is we were in the car one day. He was 5 or 6, and he's a big F1 fan. And we were in traffic, and we were crawling along slowly towards a junction. We got to the junction, the red light changed, and inwardly I'm swearing, cussing. My son said to me, he went, "Never mind, Mummy." He said, "We're in pole position for next time." And I just absolutely stunned me. I thought, oh, this is cute, this is funny, but wow, what a lesson in resilience. And, if you just, you narrowly miss out, you fail, you're in pole position for next time. And I just really sort of took that. He should write a book. He's 9 now. He should write a book. He's full of life lessons.
Nice. Well, we'll have him on next time. Brilliant. Thank you. What about you, Isobel?
I just think resilience is the number one characteristic that everybody needs to build more of. When I look around society and I look at how fragile so many people are, how sensitive they are to criticism, how sensitive some of the politicians that are running countries are to criticism, it strikes me that we're not resilient as a society anymore, and we need to develop a better, more stoic way of marching through life compared to what we've seen over the last 15 or 20 years.
I mean, look how crazy the world went, during the pandemic when we ran out of toilet rolls, So yeah, we need more resilience.
It's just mad,
yeah.
I mean, go out there and get the scars. Because it's the scars that will build your career. It's the scars that will bring you the lessons in life that will help you survive whatever it is the future's going to throw at us. We need to have those.
Resilience. Resilience is key, and don't worry, you're in pole position for next time. I like it. Thank you both very much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting us.